I started attending the church with him and his family, you
What
know?
did your family think of that?
So my mom was skeptical, but at least she was like, as long as it's not a cult, um, she was
Surprise!
okay. Yeah. Well, I mean,
Well, Hunter, thank you so much for joining me on Growing Up Fundie. I'm really
oh, of
excited to
course.
talk to you. It was very
Yeah.
interesting because you actually reached out to me to ask me a question on my web form, and that led to you being a guest. You were looking for specific content, and basically now you're here to be that specific content, which is
Yeah.
awesome. I think.
Yeah.
And so, without further ado, I'll let you kind of tell everybody what it is we're here to talk about today, and who are you, and what are you all about?
Yeah. So thanks for having me. And I basically grew up two different versions of Fundie. So
Yes.
I had I was like a Baptist, like my first church was a Southern Baptist church, like
Oh boy.
pre-K
Yep.
and all that in there. And
Yep.
then like later in my teenage years, I decided to convert to Eastern Orthodoxy, specifically Russian Orthodoxy, which
Wow.
is, as I
Not
was saying in the
Baptist.
pre-show,
Much
yeah,
different.
yeah, much different. And as I was saying, kind of in the pre-show, has been kind of infiltrated by very alt-right, kind of elements. Um, so uh, and I was one of those at the very beginning.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, people are probably listening to
So
this wondering, how does someone go from Southern Baptist to Russian Orthodox? And I've got that same question. How on earth does that happen?
so like my best friend that I met in middle school, I was is Russian Orthodox. Um and we're still friends even though I'm kind of separated from that world now. Actually very separated. But like it was essentially I was already kind of deconstructing myself at 13
Wow.
from like the mega church Baptist church that I was going to. And like because it felt more like a contemporary rock concert than like anything else. And
Yeah.
I had been to a Methodist church there for a while, and
Methodists
we
know how to
went to,
party.
well, no, well, yeah, my mom liked the contemporary services at the Methodist church, but I liked the actual traditional like high church stuff,
I
as
see.
high church as the Methodist can do.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but
And for
which is
anybody who doesn't know what that means, how would you describe high church in your own words?
so high church is like liturgical, like traditional hymns, like traditional like robes and stuff like that. And there's high church Protestant, which is like Anglican or
Right.
Episcopalian,
Right.
and and some Lutheran churches are also high church. And then like Catholics are traditionally
That's what
high church.
that's what comes to
Yeah,
mind when I think of it. When I think of high church, or when
yeah,
I think of like Orthodox, a lot of times what comes to mind is like a Catholic church, or like a very Indiana Jones-esque experience, in a
oh
temple type
yeah.
situation. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and in fact, like the Eastern Orthodox don't really call their churches. It's
Hmm.
temples. So
There
it's
you go. Yeah,
like
exactly.
parishes or temples, or that's what you're usually here. Although in America it does seem to be like just especially the converts still call them churches. So
Interesting. And so Baptist church was basically too modern, like too hip hop, too lib for you?
like at least the non-denominational, which means Baptist.
Means Baptist. I'm so glad you said
Yeah,
that. That is like, it
yeah,
means you Baptist. Come on, people.
yeah, yeah. I went to 2 different mega churches, and they were both like, nah. Like, I got really tired of the Sunday school programming because it was just like, yeah, I'm hip. Like,
Yes.
it's like
Yes.
I would rather be digging into the Bible and actually learning the stuff. And I've always been that way. I've always been like the history nerd, like,
Yeah.
you know. So, and it essentially, so my anyway, my going back to my friend, like like I was pretty much at the point at 14, like 13 or 14, that I was sure that I was going to join the Catholic Church when I
Wow.
was 18.
That's,
So,
I can't even imagine that young
yeah.
being that
Yeah.
conservative religious and like that's serious about it. Like
Yeah.
that's wild.
Yeah, and it wasn't even, some of it was just like the Catholic Church is pretty. The
Yeah.
Catholic Church has very, it's very pretty, like, and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So, and I had never heard of Eastern Orthodoxy, never heard of Russian Orthodoxy or anything like that, which they're the same, by the way. They're
Yeah.
just, like Greek Orthodoxy versus Russian Orthodoxy. It's just the different flavor. Do you
I
want
was about to
chocolate ice
say,
cream or
yeah.
vanilla ice cream? Um, and like, um, I had never heard of Eastern Orthodoxy, even though I had like done research into Catholicism, and theoretically, I mean, should have known about it, but I guess just being 13, not really having the Googling skills, you know,
Right.
because that's how I was learning everything, which
Right.
probably didn't help anything.
Right. Right.
Any like radicalizing me for, but
How old are you right now?
I'm about to turn 29.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
I was gonna say I would believe early 20s. I would believe early 30s. Like you've got a vibe that says it could have been
Yeah.
either one.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely have that vibe. In fact, if I had my hair grown out, it would be like 40s.
Yeah.
Like, because it's like I've got gray in my hair. But um but like yeah, so
We were
he
talking about.
was Eastern
Oh yeah. Sorry.
Orthodox. Yeah, he was Eastern Orthodox, and or is Eastern Orthodox, and like basically we just got along really well. Um and like we started just talking religion, which obviously, common thing to do for,
Sure.
kids,
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
on the playground,
Right.
talking about
Oh yeah.
which
As you
actually it
do.
wasn't really it wasn't really the playground. I went to a charter school that followed like the PACE program, believe it or not. It was a public school, and
Really.
this guy like was a fake doctor in the like diploma mill Kenthoven school, um and was friends with the guy that started the whole like pace program, and they masqueraded it somehow to actually like pass as a public school, like a public charter school, like
Really?
non-religious. Yeah, so I'll get into that in just a second.
That's
But
wild.
but so yeah, I hadn't heard anything about orthodoxy, and um and he basically introduced me to it, and I went to a couple like services, and I had already had some reservations about the primacy of the Pope, like the
At 13?
authoritarian. Yes, 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 yeah. It's that Protestant, it's that one lingering like thing of Protestant, and so the Orthodox do not have like a Pope per se. So they
Really?
don't. Yeah, so I mean
Hmm.
there is like the all the bishops are technically equal, but there's like the first among equals.
Oh,
um so yeah, so like the chairman, like
so there's still
there's
a
still a
boss.
hierarchy.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
say
but it's like the chairman of the bishop's council or whatever, the synod.
the chairman of
So
the equals,
yes, and then there's like a chairman of that chairman, which is the patriarch in Constantinople.
which
um
is the Pope. Just like,
Essentially, yes, that is who the Pope goes to visit. Like that is who the Catholic Pope goes to
that's
visit when like they have like there's issues,
Huh.
or they want to like, make good on something. I don't know what they do. Like, we're
Interesting.
not allowed to do communion back and forth. So like,
Hmm.
like there's the Catholics will allow the Orthodox to take communion in Catholic churches. Orthodox will not accept communion from the Catholics, and we will not allow Catholics to take communion at our churches
But it
because they are heretics. They're
but
heretics. So yeah.
that's what. And so you enjoyed it. You had a good time.
Oh yeah. Oh
Do
yeah.
Well, let
It
me ask
was
you this, because I feel like everybody went through that, like, we wanted to be as Christian-y as possible phases when we were, like, 10, 11, 12. Did you enjoy it because it was, like, painfully boring and stuffy, and you're like, "Yes, this is the pain I wanted to feel," or did you genuinely enjoy it?
No, I genuinely enjoyed it. It wasn't
Interesting.
like stuffy or anything like
Oh,
that.
good. Yeah.
Like it was actually, so the Orthodox like liturgy is actually very beautiful.
Yeah.
Like I encourage people to just go look at an Orthodox divine liturgy, which is like the main Sunday service. Um, and like
I've
just on
actually been to
YouTube.
one on accident.
Yeah, it's like, and it depends on the church. Some churches
Yeah.
are small, it's not as ornate, but there's like at big cathedrals, it can be immensely
It was
like
beautiful. It was
yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
And I think that's what kind of like hooked me.
Okay.
So
Which makes
again,
sense because it is
yeah,
beautiful, and it's
yeah.
very if you're a history fan, you get very strong historical vibes from
Well, right.
the
And they
service, yeah.
also claim that they are the original church and they have not changed in 2000 years.
Do Is
Like
that
at
true?
all.
Is that
No.
true?
No,
I
it's
was gonna
fucking
say,
propaganda.
it's kinda like
It's
First Baptist Church, there's, like, 17 of them. It's like, one of you's
yeah.
lying. One of you's lying.
Yeah. Well, and even the Baptists, came like only 200 or so years ago,
Right.
in
Right.
their current form. So it's like whatever. But yeah, so that's I started attending the church with him and his family.
What did your family think of that?
So my mom was skeptical, but at least she was like, as long as it's not a cult, um, she was
Surprise!
okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not really a cult, but like you definitely get small little,
Yeah.
and it also depends on your definition of cult.
I was gonna say, I
So
think I have a
yeah,
different definition of cult than most people do.
yeah. Like using the bite model, I can definitely like this was cult light, like not close to the Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses, but cult light,
I like that. Cult light. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But so yeah, this school was like jumping back to the school, it was like it was bizarre. And I think that was part of the reason why I wanted to do something else other than Baptist, because the dude was a Southern Baptist like preacher. Like so like he
Hmm.
was the superintendent, he was like the founder of the school, he was also the principal at our location.
Jeez.
Like, and I have a credit or a half a credit in Bible history from high school.
Wow.
And our textbook, guess what our textbook was?
The Bible.
A KJV Bible, like a
Yay!
dime store KJV Bible.
Yes.
So and it was just him like preaching at us for an hour twice a week. So yep.
And do you and in hindsight, was he actually preaching like
Oh,
Christian
absolutely.
Baptist, or was he preaching like a weird version of his own kind of
I mean, there was definitely some of his own stuff in there, but like it was pretty Baptist. Like
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
interesting. That's
yeah,
good. No,
like
that's good. I mean,
more
better
more
than
fundamental than yeah, more fundamental than what I was used to, in fact. Like he
right.
was a young earth creationist.
Oh
Like
boy. And that's
I
an
was
accredited school?
yeah, yeah. I yep.
That's
That's
whack.
that I have like 3 years of schooling that that actually got transferred to a public school from there.
Wow.
So,
And so you would go to school during the day, and then when you would go to church, you were going to this Eastern Orthodox church.
yeah.
And were you struggling at all with what you were being told in one setting versus what you were being told in another? Did you go to school feeling like you didn't believe what your teachers were telling you
No,
necessarily?
like I
That's
mean
good.
the school, because the school, like the teachers, don't tell you anything in an ACE program or, you know, a PACE
Okay.
program. They're just like monitors. You
Okay.
know, Seth Andrews just did a thing on the whole accelerated Christian education that you could probably link down in the description if
Yeah,
you
I'll
wanted
do
to.
that.
Yeah, like, and like he apparently went to a school for a little bit that was based on that system, and I was like, oh, I recognize that, you know, putting the American flag up in the partition and waiting for the minder to come around and like
The
not really
minder?
answer. Yeah, like, so it's like they're called like a proctor or like a monitor.
Okay, I've heard of
So
proctor, but like a minder
yeah,
just sounds very like archaic and
yeah,
scary.
no, there's so many archaic phrases. I and like my brain is wired archaically because of all this stuff.
Wow.
Like people will be like, "Are you? Why are you using archaic English?" It's like it's just how I grew up.
That's I don't know. That's just what
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
what you. I
yeah,
see use archaic language, but that's just because I am a hillbilly. So
yeah,
I got no
yeah.
excuse. I didn't go to no fancy pace program. I just
Oh,
school of hard knocks.
oh yeah,
Um, and did your friend go to this school as well?
yes, that's where we met. So,
Yeah, I remember
um,
you had said you met in middle school, but wasn't sure if you actually went to the same middle school or just were in middle school when you met.
yeah, that's the only way we would have met because we were from two different towns. So,
Interesting. And so then I guess you were Eastern Orthodox for a long time.
yeah, so I officially, like, after catechism, I officially joined the church. So, catechism is about a year long. So, like, I
And is that like
was,
a study program basically to like get
yeah,
into the church?
yep, the priest is teaching a class. Like, it was like once a week. And it was like, here's how this is bad. Here's how we do it. Here's how this is bad. Here's how we do it. Like, kind of just reprogramming,
Interesting.
like just a reprogramming, like, kind of thing, just like the Catholic catechism.
And you go
So,
through that as a teenager?
yeah, you go through it anytime.
Yeah.
Like, if you're converting, you have to go through the class no matter what. So,
Interesting.
now my friend never had to go through it because he was born into an
Right.
Orthodox family.
Right.
Um, but his family were converts. Like, it was just he was born as Orthodox.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was about a year and a half of like learning how to be Orthodox. And then in like 2012 I was baptized in like during Pentecost. So, which is in June. So, um
Interesting.
yeah, yeah, it's really, looking back on it, it was a great, like, I was like super enthralled to be a part of it, and like I could finally like take communion, the Eucharist, and like go to confession and all these different things.
So what
And
changed?
um like it was just like, as the years progressed, and this was also because I had undiagnosed depression during
Mm,
high school.
mm.
So various factors leading into that. But one of them was no doubt like purity culture bullshit.
Oh, yeah. That'll
So
fuck you up. Yep.
yeah, because like hormones and like male hormones specifically, like, you know, and feeling ashamed every time that I wanted to do anything, and
Yep.
then literally crying and like begging for mercy afterwards. Like, it really, yeah. So I had a lot of that, and you know, the
Yeah.
negative like feedback loop, and like, you know, it just kept getting worse and worse, and you know, but I just kept like reading more, and like reading more of the Bible, reading more of the church fathers, and like getting deeper into it, and because I thought that was what's going to help, because eventually I'll quit being tempted by demons, you know.
Yeah.
And like,
And by demons, you mean like your genetic biology
no,
that's just
literal demons,
yeah.
literal demons. No, yeah, yeah, it was, I like, there's like, they exercise the houses every year as like a house
Oh.
blessing. Yeah.
Oh.
So, and it's a
Oh, I
house
was being
blessing, but it's,
sarcastic.
no, these are literal demons. We're
Oh.
talking literal. Yeah. So,
Wow.
um, yeah. So just like, just like the angels and the saints can help you, demons are also all around you at all times.
Oh,
So,
and so they're like they're for serious about it. Like
oh
it's
yeah,
not. Oh, that's
yep,
interesting.
yep.
And so
So,
did so you actually thought that demons were like
oh yeah,
around you. Did
yeah.
you ever was there ever a time that you thought you could pinpoint, like, this is a demon? Like, this is what you would have said as an example of a time that you were possessed or surrounded by a demon, or you saw a demon or experienced it in some way? Or did you just keep them at bay all the time to never experience anything?
Uh, like, absolutely. I have, like, so when I, like, you do a prayer rule, like in the morning and the evening. I was never good at the morning, you know, barely did the evening. And that was also what was like really frustrating, like, and leading me into depression. But like one night while I remember this one specific incident. One night when I was doing my prayer rule, I started hearing like rocks or something being thrown at my window. And like there's a story about Saint Anthony, one of the desert fathers, like one of the first monks, um like, and the demon is tempting, like trying to like get his attention away by throwing stuff at him and like tempting him, and like kind of like the whole, like the story of Jesus in the desert, kind
Yeah.
of that kind of flavor of story.
Yeah.
um like, and so like I was certain that it was just a demon like throwing rocks, but it was probably just a fucking cat, or like,
Wow. But
or a
you
skunk or something.
sincerely thought it
Yeah,
that's terrifying.
yeah, yeah. Like I like there was like, and I knew if I just prayed, like the demons had no power, but like they're trying to get you distracted, so like,
Wow. Were
yeah.
your parents at all concerned during this time of your life, or did you not really talk to them about it much?
So I actually converted my mom to Orthodoxy.
Really?
Yeah,
What got
so
her? Like, what was the selling point?
basically it was, oh, well, the church, this, I'm having to bring him here for catechism anyway. And like I had told her that this church was very, very like friendly and a family feeling, which she had been looking for her for the last like 10 years of her life at that point, because we had like jumped from like mega church to mega church kind of thing. And she was she had a more charismatic streak there for a while, was into Benny Hinn and like
Oh
had
god.
gifts of the spirit, like speaking in
Oh,
tongues, like, and that was her friend kind of. Yeah,
I
like I
saw
remember.
Benny Hinn like people see
Yeah,
Taylor Swift. Like, I was so
yeah.
excited to drive across the country and see old Benny.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh.
Yep. Yeah, so I remember at least she went to at least one of his things that was here. So but yeah, so like basically and then she met the people, and like the people are great. The people are great. um it's just, at the end of the day, it's the theology, it's the whole like religion part of it that's not great.
So the
But it was at the time, like, and that's what
right?
kind of drew her in. So
And so, like, when you started to deconstruct, it less about the Orthodox Church specifically and more about just religion in general, just wasn't making sense or paying out in the way that it should? Or was it something about your church specifically that you were like, "This isn't for me, religion in general, this church just isn't cutting it for me?"
it was both. So it was, I was reading more in-depth stuff into the Bible, and stuff like that, like the early church fathers. And like I had started looking into like Gnosticism, which we were expressly told not to look into because it's heresy. Don't look
The
into the heresies.
the
Like,
fastest way to get people
yeah,
to look into something is to tell them to not look into it.
yeah. And like behind me all over here, it's like Gnostic,
Yep.
Gnostic books, like the Nag Hammadi library, and like, and all that, because that's what I like studying now.
Yeah.
So, you know, um, but and I was also told by my priest not to study it. So like in college, like I wanted to go for like cultural anthropology or philosophy
No.
or religious studies,
Oh.
like secular religious studies. But I was talked out of it because those would be harmful for my soul. So
And see, that's what gets me is if you if just reading about another religion will cause somebody to lose their eternal salvation or whatever it is that their religion happens to believe, I don't think that's the book's fault. I
right,
think that's there's a disconnect there in terms of true belief or what they've been taught, or if you're able to read one book and be like, "Oh no, this is the truth now." Something was going on already, either your questions
yeah,
weren't getting answered or you were more involved in the church out of being afraid not to be than you were because you actually believed it. And that's what I don't understand is like if I were a priest or a pastor and I wanted to make sure all the little kids stayed religious in my church, I would encourage them to read that stuff and then talk to me about it.
yeah,
Because what would have probably happened when I was a kid, if I had been encouraged to do that, is I probably would have gone, "Ha, atheists believe that. Isn't that dumb?" And the preacher would have been like, "Yeah, that's dumb." And then I never would have looked at it again because nobody was
yep,
telling me to not look at it. But the minute everyone's like, "Atheists are bad, they're gonna get you," you're like, "I want to read this book right now. Like, I
yep.
gotta read it."
Yeah, I went through a philosopher phase while I was still Orthodox, and
I've never heard that phrase before, but I'm writing it down. That is
yeah,
hilarious.
the philosopher. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it's a whole like internet subculture.
Oh, well, and
So
the funny thing
yeah,
is, I know like, I can picture in my mind exactly who you're talking about when you say that. I've just never heard it referred to
yeah,
that way.
yeah, yeah. It's like, and that got me into like so many different like areas. Like and like I said, I was at one point very conservative, like politically as well. But actually,
Wild.
I started like shifting more left like before I deconstructed, and that's probably the one of the reasons for my deconstruction. So,
Yeah.
like realizing that all human beings deserve rights, not just whoever the church deems
Right.
worthy. So,
Yeah. And do you remember any particular one thing or book or show or anything that you remember really being the turning point where you're like, I can never unsee this or unread this?
um, like not really.
Hmm.
I don't think there's any one point for me. I think it's just a lot of lines on the trail. Although I will say that um that No Mud No Lotus by I always get his name wrong. But he's a Vietnamese monk. Um t- um basically Tay Nehan or Tich Nehan. He died a couple years ago, but he's very influential. Was a very influential person in Buddhist certain Buddhist circles. And my therapist had me read that,
Hmm.
and that kind of like showed that there was other paths outside of Christianity.
Yeah.
But this was, but and then of course my priest had to parry that with like a book about like the guru, the the elder, and something by Saint Paisios of Mount Athos. But anyway, like
I love that I picture this man just having a library of books he's just thrown at you being like, "No, this one." He's got, like,
literally,
an answer
yeah,
for
yeah,
everything.
yeah,
He's, like, ready to block all the
uh-huh,
secularity.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, he's definitely like he's definitely like he has his own library, but there's also like the parish library. But it
Right.
was just like, yep, book. It's like, I've got a couple of books with like his notes to me in there still, you
He was, like,
know.
ready. He was training for that
Yeah.
moment to have,
Oh
like,
yeah.
books ready to go.
Yeah, and like and our parish was so there are some parishes that I think it just depends on the priest that turn out more monks than others. and our parish was one of those.
Interesting.
So like we had a nun that had gone into the convent a couple, like I think the year that I started catechism, and then we had another one of my friend's brothers, not my best friend, but one of my friends from the church.
Mm.
Their brother went into a monastery, a
Wow.
Greek monastery in South Texas. Um, so
That is not the place I would ever think I would find a Greek monastery, gotta be honest
oh,
with you.
like it's actually really, so that's really funny. Like there is like an like so the Athonite tradition of Greek monasteries, there was actually an elder that came over from Mount Athos, which is like, imagine Vatican City, but it's run all by monks, and it's a giant like peninsula,
Wow.
like with like 7+ monasteries on it, like big monasteries.
Wow.
And it's like they still fly the Byzantine flag. They like go by Byzantine time. They're kind of stuck back. Like women aren't allowed on the
Wow.
island, like
What?
at all. So,
W w
or the peninsula. It's not an
I was gonna
island,
say,
but yeah.
are we sure that's religious, or maybe they got an alternative
Oh,
lifestyle?
well, yeah, that's
Just,
funny.
like, no shade, no shade. I'm just,
Like honestly, I like yeah, like I
you're like, "I've
wouldn't be
got thoughts."
surprised if
Yeah.
like that happened in history. Like, you know, but but yeah, it's basically because you'll lead the monks astray with your feminine ways.
I'm
So
just saying, if they
yeah,
all looked at each other and were like, "None of us are attracted to these women. We don't want them
yeah,
here." Like, just it's okay to be honest with yourself. It's okay. You
yeah,
don't have to make a church out of it.
yeah,
Um, and so then one of those monks came to the US?
yeah. So Elder, I forget his name, Elder Ephraim, I think. He died right when I was deconstructing. But yeah, he planted a number of monasteries throughout the Southwest. So the main
That's
monastery is in
wild.
Arizona, um, and then like there's one in South Texas, and I believe there's one in California, or I think there. I know there's like 3 male monasteries and like one female monastery, like
There's a female
convent.
monastery?
Yeah,
Oh,
convent.
okay, a convent.
Yeah,
I see, I
yeah.
see.
We call
Hmm,
them. They're still
yeah,
monasteries, like, and
that makes sense.
in Orthodox tradition, like they're monasteries.
Yeah.
Like yeah.
And so when you
So
finally decided when you finally were honest with yourself and you were like, "I am not a religious person anymore." What was that like? Did you feel like you had to come out in any way? Did you just stop going to church? Was it a phase out type situation? What was that like for you? Because you sound like you were really devoted to this church and to this faith. So how do you then just not be a part of it anymore?
so COVID happened.
Oh, so it was
Um
quite recent. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Um but right before that, I was going, because I had determined that I was essentially so like wretched and not deserving of heaven, that my only way to get to heaven was to become a monk.
What
So
made
I
you
was
so wretched?
sin,
You just kept
like
you just kept jerking off? Like
yeah,
you said?
essentially yes, essentially yes. So I was sexually active, like,
There it
but
is.
like
Straight to hell.
barely, like
That's you're like, "But
like
listen, like like, not enough to go to hell,
yeah,
surely. Surely
like
not."
like it was like one time, like that doesn't count,
You know,
like
and, we laugh,
so
but for
yeah,
people who didn't grow up, like, conservative religious, I remember I made out with a guy when I was in college. I was in college, made out, clothes stayed on, and I beat myself up about that for months. I remember, like, I would be at my job, and I would be like, if this person knew that I was such a trashy hoe bag doing this, like, work for them, they wouldn't even want this food. Like, they wouldn't even want what I'm handing them. They wouldn't even
yeah,
want these condiments if they knew what a slut I was because I made out with a guy in college.
yeah. No, I like I broke up with one girl because I was for like sure that I was going to be a monk already in 2016. So, and we're talking like close to pandemic that I was actually actively seeking out monasteries. So this whole
Wow.
time I was like, yes, I'm going to be a monk at some
And
point.
just because you thought that was like your only redeemable avenue for
Yes. Yeah.
wow,
And
that's so
that was
sad.
and my the priest of my parish what like was kind of pushing me that way because I wanted to study philosophy and like religious studies, like different religions and stuff like that. And so his, I guess, way of dealing with that is to say, hey, go to seminary. It turns out that seminary does cost money. I still didn't have any money, like to go to college. So it was just wanting to get approval from the priest to go to college eventually, because it's that type of religion where you kind of have to get permission to do things.
Wow.
Not super high control, but like you can do what you want, but like it's better if it's best blessed by a priest. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
Do you get like a letter of recommendation basically?
No, but you just get like a blessing and it's like, oh yeah, Father so and so told me I can do this.
It's kind of like getting a blessing from the father-in-law. Like it doesn't really
Yeah.
matter, but it matters a little bit.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
So, um and his way of doing it was telling me to go to seminary. And seminaries cost money, of course.
Right.
And there's only like 3 of them, 4 maybe in the US. And
For Eastern Orthodox.
yes.
Got
And
it.
one offers a work study program because it's part of a monastery where essentially you are a monk.
Hmm.
You basically work off your
So you're an
um
indentured servant?
yeah, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that also happens to be the one that's part of the Russian Orthodox Church, the Grokor, which I was part of the Orthodox Church in America, which is a Russian flavored church, but it's like there's history there, like with the Soviet Union and stuff.
Got it. Got it.
So, um, but Grokor tends to have more of the extremist element, but
Got it.
and super
Oh.
conservative element. So
Oh. Like
yeah,
extremist how?
like alt right, like
Yeah.
like yeah, like
I was
so
gonna make a joke about stealing the election earlier, and now I wish I had.
like actually, one of the organizers for the Charlottesville um riot was Orthodox. So
Oh,
uh, yeah.
lovely. What a small
Uh
world.
the Traditionalist Workers Party. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, um but
Charming.
yeah, so uh yeah, it's just like hmm. So like
So
those
did
things.
did you end up going?
No, I never ended up going to seminary, but because I figured out that I was not eligible to be a priest because it's in canon law. You can't be disabled and I have cerebral palsy. So I cannot do all the things is required of a priest because priests need 2 hands to do certain things. So
That seems like that seems like the opposite of what Jesus would want. I'm just gonna be
yeah,
honest.
the whole kind of the whole church is the opposite of I think what
Yeah.
Jesus wanted. I think it was
Yeah.
more anarchist. Like
That's
yeah,
I
but
mean, that must have been really upsetting. That must have been so painful because that was, like, what you really wanted to do.
yeah, yeah,
So, basically, they're saying, "You are such a horrible sinner that the only redeemable way you can still get to heaven is by going to a monastery." And then you're like, "Great, I'll go to a monastery." And they're like, "Except
you
you
can't ever
don't."
be a priest. Yeah,
So
because
so
like yeah, because I was being told to become at least like study theology, and the expectation when you study theology in the Orthodox churches, you become a priest.
right,
So and the other path for that is become a monk. So and of course monks are celibate. So like and I'm already having these problems with sexual urges, and it's like it's just so like and cognitive dissonance was so high because I was learning things because I have never stopped learning. Like I started learning things about evolution and like stuff like that, and it just, just kept piling on. And like,
So how do you even where did you go from there after that?
so in 2019 I was at a monastery. It was the monastery that I had finally chosen to become a part of.
And they would
um
they let you go?
well, so there, it's a whole process, but I
Got
was beginning the
it. Got
process.
it. Got
Like
it.
I had like gotten permission from the abbot to stay, um you know like come back and stay for a little bit longer, because usually it's like you go for 3 days, you go for a week, you know like you
Right.
return home, you come back for a week,
Right.
and
It's like boot
then
camp kind of.
yeah, and then like you, not really like boot camp, but it's like you come and you stay for a little while and you get
Right.
used to the services, the schedule, and you meet the brotherhood. And and this was a small monastery in the Puget Sound.
Oh, I bet
um
that was beautiful.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah,
uh
that sounds beautiful.
might have been one of the reasons. um
Yeah.
so but no, lovely. It was a Russian monastery, but they were English speaking. um and I had visited I had been to that one in South Texas. I had plans to go to the largest one in West Virginia, which is like I never got to that one, but like because I had already decided on this one. But I had got permission to like come back for a few days, and then like start the process of adding a few days more, and then a few weeks more, and then
Wow.
a few months more, and then eventually you're just handed some robes and you become a novice.
And you just
So
don't leave. You just
yep, and
stay.
then you can leave while you're still a novice, but once you take vows, you're in there. So, and
Wow.
you're usually at the same monastery for the rest of your life.
And
So
so then what happened?
like I said, COVID happened. Like, so
Oh, got it.
I
Yes.
was allowed to, basically, because like digital services, like they set up a camera in the nave, like the part of the church that you stand, and because there's no pews, so it makes it a lot easier. um yeah, Russians don't use pews. um
And it's also quite ableist, it sounds.
oh yeah, no, like I was so hard on myself for not being
Yeah.
able to stand the whole time, and I would force myself to stand. Like I would hurt myself. I would physically hurt myself.
That's
Like
unreal.
especially like during Lent, when you're doing like when you're having to do full prostrations and stuff.
Jeez.
Like upwards of like in some services, like the canon of Saint Andrew of Crete. It's like you're doing upwards of like 40 full prostrations a service. um so but like yeah, it's but anyway, yeah, basically like I started off watching the services from home on Sunday, and doing the typica, which is like what a layperson can do, like read the part of the divine services that a layperson can read. um and eventually it just kind of like it gave me enough space that I could actually kind of step back and like take a look
Mm,
at if I still really wanted to keep doing this, because I already had that cognitive dissonance, right?
right.
So if like I was like, one of them has to go, because it had gotten to that boiling point, especially with now the church is like, I'm hearing things about anti-vax and stuff like that, and like it's just like they were allowing some people to still go to church, like it was like you signed up if you wanted to be there in person kind of thing. like like our city only allowed like 10 people in a church building or whatever
Yeah.
during that time. um so like there is still some in part, because the priest can't serve it all by himself. There has to be at least be one other person.
Hmm.
So that's just
Just
an
because of
Orthodox thing. Yeah.
responsibilities or
uh
symbolism or
I think it's symbolic. It's just
yeah.
how it's been done. It's tradition. So um
But I
so
just feel like tradition can change for a global pandemic. Call me I mean, I know I'm an atheist, I know I'm a heathen, but I feel like once in a lifetime, once in a millennia, pandemics call for maybe a little bit of change. I don't know, maybe
Yeah,
that's
you would think, but no, the Orthodox Church pretends like it doesn't change for anything.
it probably
Um,
doesn't. I mean,
it
most well, no, that's not true.
it has certainly changed throughout
I
the
was gonna
years.
say,
There's,
like
in fact, there's a thing in Russian Orthodox history that's called the Niconian Reforms,
yeah, I was
and it
gonna say,
says
I
it
said that
right
and then I
there.
yeah.
Yeah, and it says it like right there. Reforms, reforms. What does that word mean?
To
Like,
stay the same
yeah, it's like
forever.
no, your church literally reformed, and you still claim that it's the same fucking
Yes.
church from like 2,000 years ago, and it's like the Russians weren't even like in that area at that point.
Yeah.
It's like the Greeks converted you. Like, come on now.
Yeah.
Like,
And
so
so then you were basically home alone with your thoughts, thinking about whether
yeah,
or not this was what you wanted to do. And what was it that made you think maybe it wasn't what you wanted to do? Because you seem so determined. Like, what could be the thing that made you step back and go, "Hmm, hmm."
I think it was the fact that because so I am sedentary, like I'm disabled enough that I can't have a job.
Right.
So um so I think it was the fact that I felt like I was being seen by the populace at large because nobody could go anywhere. So I was like,
Yes.
finally, people like understand. And so like some of that depression got lifted during that time.
Which is interesting because most people, I feel like their depression got heavier
Exactly.
during lockdown. Interesting.
Yeah. So like there like I passed off some of my depression on them. Like
Yeah, here you go, my friends. Take
yes.
a piece, all of you.
Yeah. There was definitely enough of it for the entire world to take a chunk. Because yeah, that was a super dark period in my life for like
I bet.
7 years.
But it's interesting that
Yeah.
not being able to do what you thought you wanted to do with your life helped your depression.
Yeah, it just like it was also like therapy. I'm not going to say it wasn't like with the aid of therapy. Like
Oh,
I was
yeah, no, of course,
yeah,
yeah.
like my therapist at the time was great. Like I said, he got me to read these like Buddhist texts, and he was a little bit more new agey. He
Yeah,
wasn't too new agey that it was like uncomfortable, but like
yeah.
he got me to think about different stuff,
Good.
and like and encouraged me to look into philosophy more, whereas my priest was not, obviously. um and it was just I kind of credit like him with really kind of breaking me out of that worthlessness and like that whole I don't know, that whole shell.
Yeah,
So um and it was just it was it was great, like once I finally like threw it off, because I threw it off around Christmas in 2020.
right.
Like if it wasn't
When
on
you say
Christmas Day,
threw it off, you mean just like
yeah, I was like, I'm an atheist.
yeah,
Like, I mean, I didn't say that,
interesting.
but I was
Yeah,
like, I'm a non-theist. I don't believe in God.
that's
Because
that's a
I was
big leap.
I was still scared to use the atheist label for months after that still.
Because
So
even after you
yeah.
decide you're not religious anymore, your brain is still like, "But hell is real.
Uh-huh. And
Don't use the A word."
it was a pretty quick transition for me, for the not believing in hell part.
Yeah.
I'm thankful for that I don't have that, because I know that people,
Some people, it
you know,
linger. Yeah.
yeah. So like, and it probably went away within a couple months for me. And
That's awesome.
the first person that I came out to as a new atheist, was a friend from that same parish, that we had been in what was essentially the youth group, even though it was like 5 people or 5 kids, around my same age.
Mhm.
But she had stopped going to church a couple years prior, which I didn't know why, but but I knew that I had heard through the grapevine that she had just become non-Christian, um because I still knew her family. um so I contacted her because like I knew her, like she sold stuff on Etsy. I contacted her through Etsy.
Ah,
Like I was
that's
like,
funny.
"Hey, can you like help talk me like through this? Can I like talk to you?" And she was kind enough to drive like a county from a county away and like fill out her Etsy orders and just kind of talk to me in a park,
Wow.
and like and that really helped. And you
That's
know,
cool.
so and I think probably a couple months after that I came out to my mom, and my
What
mom was surprisingly okay with it.
I was gonna
Like
say, what was the response from your family?
like I think I my brother knew before my mom, but my brother's always been kind of not religious.
Yeah.
So, yeah, not really caring. But and my mom was like okay, maybe like I think she thought it might have been a phase, and
I was gonna say,
she might still think that, but like
yeah. Which, I mean,
yeah.
if I had a son who was about to go to a monastery and then a year later is like, "I'm an atheist," I'd be like, sleep on it." Like,
Yeah.
sleep on it. Make sure that's what you want. Is this over a girl? Is it somebody you met? Is she telling you you're not a Christian anymore? Just making sure.
Nope, definitely not. It was just yeah, it was crazy. Like it was crazy how fast the switch flipped.
Yeah.
Like, but I
Yeah.
think
But
it was seismic, like like the tectonic plates just kind of, and then just, you know,
yep.
just a spring and an earthquake and just,
Mount
like
Vesuvius, baby.
yeah, just like, and it's like I'm not a Christian anymore. I'm not anything anymore.
Yeah, and
So
you felt pretty okay with it? Because I know some people go through, like, a grieving process first, but it
I think
seems
I
like
went through that grieving process before this even happened. Like
yeah,
while I was looking at the monasteries. So
yeah.
it was kind of like I've called it for other things as well, pre-grief.
Or it's you
Um
were the walk away wife of the
yeah.
Orthodox Church. You
Yeah.
grieved that relationship before you left.
Yeah.
And so how do you
Yeah.
feel now? Because 'Cause you're still friends with that best friend, right?
Yeah. So and like I feel great. Like I am still, admittedly I have depression.
Yeah.
It's managed though. It's like, you know, um I do plan on sending this to my therapist because I was like, "Hey, do you want to watch this podcast episode?"
Cool. Yeah.
So because she's also an ex trad calf. She's a, she was very very fundamentalist Catholic.
If you're listening to this, please contact me. You can contact me in the description of any platform you're watching or listening on. I'd love to talk to you.
She's great. Like she's very into Gestalt therapy.
Mm,
So, which
interesting.
is yeah, which is a very interesting kind of school. I don't think we have enough time to talk
I
about
was
it.
gonna say, that's like a whole
Yeah.
other episode right there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but like, if she contacts you,
Yeah.
perfect
Listen,
time to talk.
contact me, reach out, contact me,
Yeah.
thank you. So, you feel better.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you've kind of does everything feel like it's falling into place, makes a little bit more sense? You feel more like who you're supposed to be, or is it a different kind of good feeling?
Absolutely. I feel like I'm actually living my true life because
Yes.
I
Yes.
finally get to like I never have gone to college. I don't know if I ever will because
Yeah.
it's prohibitively expensive,
Oh,
but I've
yes.
got
Oh,
books and books and books for days and days and days. So and I desperately want to get through more of them. I
yes.
can sit down and read a pretty thick book in a weekend, but
Yes.
like I've got many thick books at this point, and
Yes.
it's like yeah,
If you want a quick read, one of my favorite reads that I love recommending to people is Why We Believe in Gods by J. Anderson Thompson.
it's on my wish list actually
That's like a
from
one-day read.
yeah,
You can get and then, The God Delusion is also a
yeah,
really, really good book.
yeah. Who is that? Is that is that Dawkins?
Let's see. The God I think that's, let's see, because there's The God Delusion, and then there's also, let's see here.
Because I've got Hitchens. Like I've got
God
God is Not Great by Hitchens. I read that one.
that is Richard Dawkins, but there's another one too, that's really good. that's because I've got God is Not Great too. Let's see. It's by my friend Dr. Jack Wathy.
Okay.
Um, Illusion of God's Presence.
Okay.
I
Yeah. I
always
think.
get those two titles mixed. I'm like the God illusion, the God delusion, delusion of
Yeah.
illusion. Yeah, illusion of
Yeah.
God's presence. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a running wish list of all kinds of books. Like I've already got like 900 books though, so it's like, do I really need another like couple
Just
before I
just
read
start a
some?
podcast. That way
Yeah.
you can claim the books are for episodes of your
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah, just do like booktube. Just,
Yeah.
it's a
That's
write off.
right.
Like,
I have a
yeah.
whole shelf
Yeah.
behind in my detective lair. I have a
Yeah.
whole shelf of books that were supposed to be for the podcast that have yet to make it to the podcast.
Yeah.
But keep buying
Well,
them
yeah,
anyway.
it's funny because I buy the religious studies books and then I will read a thing on Christian nationalism instead. Like
Yep.
like it's
Yep.
just it so I tend to say that I study both
Yeah. Oh
because it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
one is like I want to study these, but it's like
Yes.
right now the Christian nationalist stuff is really scary and really like like here and now, and we need to know about it.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I just ordered Ben Onishi's new book, Preparing for War.
Mm.
So and
I also recommend Andrew Seidel if you haven't read any of his stuff.
I have both of his books. In
Yeah,
fact, if you
he's
look,
awesome.
that red one right there
Yeah,
is
yeah, exactly,
the
right there.
American
Yep.
Crusade. Yep.
Yeah, very good. And what I like about those books is they're also accessible for everybody. You don't have to have a law degree to understand what they're
Exactly.
talking about.
Yeah.
Um, well, Hunter, if you had any advice, like say somebody's listening to this and they're like, I hear myself in Hunter, except I'm not quite where Hunter is yet. And I want to know how to get there, whether it's mentally, emotionally. What would you say to somebody who wants to find themselves in the place in life where you are now?
Give yourself permission to ask questions.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
just ask the questions. If it actually is, like, if God is real, if the church is true, if the things that the church teaches is true, um the then the questions should be like answered in that way. If they aren't like in line with the church teaching or whatever, maybe there's something else. So I
I love
just,
that.
yeah.
I feel like I've said this like ad nauseum on this podcast, but I'll say it again. I honestly feel like the basis of true belief is being exposed to other ideas that allow you to hear what the opposite side is saying and thinking and doing all the research, watching it, reading it, and saying, at the end of the day, I still truly believe the
Yeah.
Orthodox belief or the Baptist belief or whatever it is, as
Yeah.
opposed to, I'm not going to ask myself any of these questions ever because the answer scares me. We were talking before we went on the record, and I was saying how, I think it was before we went on the record, maybe it was on the record, talking about how if all it takes is one podcast episode or one video to just crumble the fabric of your belief system, I don't think that was your belief system. I think you were
Yeah.
told that was your belief system.
Yeah.
Um, and so I couldn't agree with you more. Allow yourself to ask questions, allow yourself to do that research, allow yourself to dig around because you'll either find what you're looking for. Maybe you're already looking for permission to leave behind what it was you were told was your entire identity, or you will read everything there is to read and you'll discover that it was true belief the whole time and you'll stay exactly where you're at.
Yep. And I was already trying to do that when I was 13.
Yes.
But then
Yes.
I just took a
Yes.
step backwards.
Yes.
And it's so frustrating. It's like I could have had like a more average high school.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
because there's no
Absolutely.
such thing as normal. But
No. No.
yeah.
Absolutely not. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially not these days. Are you kidding? No way.
Yeah.
But, well, Hunter, thank you so much for your time. And first of all, thank you for reaching out that initial time. I really appreciate some of the questions you asked. It made me kind of take a step back and realize, there are a lot of stories that deserve more of a platform and more of a voice. And like just getting a perspective on it doesn't mean I've gotten as many perspectives on these topics as I can. And so I appreciate you being the person to say, hey, what about this? What about this perspective? What about this background? Who do you have that talks about these things? And then thank you for being that person, for being the perspective and the voice.
Yeah, I just happen to be a YouTube junkie. Like, I
Yay!
just watch all the podcasts. Like,
Yay! That's
so,
awesome.
and anybody that wants to find me can, like, I'm just Gnome usually, or the Clockwork Gnome, anywhere.
I love that.
So, like,
And
yeah,
I can link some of your stuff in the description if that's cool with you, the Clockwork
like,
Gnome.
I mean, I've only got really an Instagram that's like public facing, but
Got
like
it.
it doesn't really matter. You don't have to,
Okay.
but like you can find, like, in atheist spaces, in various spaces, you can find me,
Wave at
like,
the
yeah, with Gnome and like Pelagia's, like one of Pelagia's characters of
That's
my
cool.
face smoking a pipe.
That's cool.
So
Very distinct. If you see a Apologia gnome smoking a pipe, you will
yes,
know that it's Hunter.
yeah.